Hello Dreamers, and welcome to this new appointment with the fantastic tutorials on dreams. In the previous episode we saw something very beautiful but also complex. This time, obviously, something even more difficult. For your joy, spread your arms and have fun learning with this new tutorial on dreams. Don't be too scared. As usual, we will see everything step by step, and if something is not clear to you, I'm here to answer your questions. Like last week, we saw the doll system that I created for Jinx and that I used to carry on this little project too. A system that gives me the possibility to move the character inside the scenarios, but above all a very interesting way to give a fake 3D perspective to our works. Today we will see another such system that I applied to spaceships on my work I did previously on StarWars. I want to finish this 2024 trying to show you everything I have done and created on Dreams. At the same time, I'm working on new projects that will accompany us in 2025 for new fantastic tutorials to go and exploit all the power of Dreams. So stay connected and follow me if you want. Last thing, before we start, let's try to reach 400 subscribers by Christmas. It would be a nice gift. Thanks for the support, like, and... In one of my previous tutorials on this same project, we had seen the camera movements. If you haven't seen it, I recommend you go and get it. Today we are going to see the spaceships here and how I made them getting this animation. We will start from the Starfighter and we'll see how I created the fake 3D here to render the movement of the spaceship. The tutorial will be divided into two parts. In the next episode we will see how I animated this movement. Follow the movement of my hands. But before I go any further, I want to show you how I helped myself to make some of the animations here on Dreams. If you go to the web at this address, you will find a very interesting site where there is the possibility of downloading 3D models of anything. If you don't know it, I suggest you take a look at it. The name is this, Sketchfab. For example, if I write StarWars, I get various 3D models on StarWars, from characters to spaceships, etc. I searched for what I needed, which was spaceships. Let's see if I can find them. I had the keyword Jedi. Here this is the ship that I then used on Dreams. If I click on it and enter the model, I have the preview of the 3D model. And the fantastic thing is that I can rotate the camera as I want, so that I can already have an idea of what I will have to draw on Procreate, the various parts I need, and then go to Dreams and animate them. I study the movements here and then replicate them. But for the first part of today's tutorial, let's go and see the Starfighter. Let's start with the simplest one. Here it is. Does this movement remind you of anything? How could I make the same animation on Dreams? These 3D models, as I was telling you, are very useful to have a preview of what will be the animations to be created on Dreams. If you don't know this site, I hope I was helpful. It's useful for many things and has an infinite and constantly updated library. But now let's see how to apply all this on Dreams. Here we are back on Dreams to explain how I made this animation. Today we will start from TIE-Starfighter. First thing I do is look for the ship we are interested in. As usual, my timelines are full of elements. Okay, I'd say I found it. I'm duplicating the group for now because I'm going to make some change. but if we need the previous, it's better to keep it. I remove the lens blur filter, we don't need it for now. Now I'm going to remove some elements to better focus on the spaceship. And a lighter color for the background. Ok, like this, so you have a clear view on the model. Ok, first of all, let's see the levels that make up the ship. And there are three main ones. I'm hiding the wings for now, this is the central part. The elements of the ship are contained in a main group where with the fixed anchor point I can perform this zoom in and out and these rotations. Inside the group we find another group that contains the levels of the ship, and with the anchor point fixed in the center I can rotate the ship on its center of gravity. With this system of groups and subgroups I was able to create this type of animation, precisely because I have the possibility of modifying the anchor point on each group. In the main group by moving and zooming, and in the subgroup rotate the TIE-Starfighter, getting really smooth and realistic animations. As I was saying, the first element is the central part of the spaceship, with this shape. This is the ship seen from behind. I made another similar one, but with the front part. And you can see it here. Some spaceship towards the camera, so we'll see the front part. Details that perhaps don't notice, especially if the movements are fast, but I want everything in my works to be perfect, and I think you are starting to understand this. Now I'm going to rediscover the wings, which are the most interesting part to understand. The wing on the left and the wing on the right. As you can see, when the spaceship changes direction, the wings also move, and there are two animations that I implemented to create this effect, and that is scaling and distortion. I'm going to turn off the distortion and resizing tools for now, so we can figure out the shape of the wings. Resize on X and Y axis. Ok. As you can see, the shape of these two elements is frontal towards the viewer, and that's how I drew it on Procreate. If I go back with the resize tool and with the distortion, I got the shape I needed, creating the right perspective. Here we are. You can see it better with the distortion of the four vertices of the shape. I was able to follow the correct perspective of the wings. To work better with the distortion tool, it's better to have a shape facing us. We don't always have the possibility to draw shapes like this, that we can then distort on dreams, but in this case it was very useful for me to give this shape. As you can see, by taking any vertex of the wing, I can modify the shape as I want, creating the correct perspective. If I had started from this shape, it would have been much more difficult to distort the wing, because the vertices on the right would have been at this point. To help you understand better, let's go to Procreate to see the same shape. This is the wing I drew. If I take the Move tool, as you can see, the vertices of the rectangle are in the same position that they will also have on Dreams. And if I go to distort the shape, I can already do some tests here on how the wing will be in perspective. Like this, okay. And this shape that I got, I'm going to import into Dreams. As you can see, the vertices are in these points. And if I have to distort this shape, it will obviously be more difficult. I'll have to move the vertices a lot farther away to get a different perspective. For this I made the wing shape frontally because, as we will see later in the tutorial, I had to work a lot with the distortion and I needed full control of the shape. The distortion tool on Dreams is something very useful and powerful. And if you draw on Procreate, you know it well, but applying this tool to animations, you can do really interesting things. And if in the future Savage Team we will be given the possibility to distort entire groups also on Dreams, we could do even more incredible things, and in some aspects it will make our work faster. Let's see now the actual animation. As I was telling you before, the spaceship is contained in a large group that makes it move and zoom, and inside it another group allows me to rotate the TIE-Starfighters. If I open the keyframes in the main group, as you can see, there are all the movements that I have set on the X and Y axis, zooms and rotations. If I move the spaceship on X and Y axis, the position of the anchor point will obviously change too. Now you can see it here in the center. But for me the key thing is that the anchor point was far from the center of the ship. To be able to zoom in this way and rotate like this. So you can see better, but this was not enough. The spaceship with the rotation also had to remain perpendicular. For this, in the group inside, I had the rotation fixed on the center of the group in correspondence with the Starfighter's movements, so that I can create this animation. But now let's see in detail the animation. We will make some movements to the right and left, so that you can understand better. I delete keyframes in both groups to start from scratch. This will be the starting point of the animation. The spaceship will come from off-screen and then make some change in direction. In the main group I set a movement keyframe half a second from the beginning and zooming like this. Trend curve, in this case gradual entry and exit. The movement is a bit too fast, let's try to bring it to 1 second. Ok, now better. I set another keyframe farther down the timeline and rotate like this and zoom out a bit. And we already got a very smooth animation. add another keyframe and this time rotate in the opposite direction. Now, in correspondence with the animations of the main group, I go to add the rotations in the subgroup. Be very careful that the keyframes match. This one here and the last one. OK. Now we adjust the rotations, then we also adjust the position of the wings obviously. The important thing here is that the spaceship remains perpendicular to an imaginary horizontal line. So now the animation works correctly. Before going into the subgroup and adjusting the wing animations, I want to add another rotation that makes the animation even more fluid and dramatic. At this point, to the change of direction, I had a rapid rotation as if the spaceship wanted to make us understand the direction in which it's going. But it's actually a movement that makes us better perceive the physics of the spaceship. This speed rotation in both directions, and this is the result. This makes us feel the physics that governs the animation and the weight of the ship. To make the animation complete, we also change the position of the wings. In this case too, the movements of the wings will have to correspond to keyframes of the main group. I would say that at the starting point the position is already correct. But in this second keyframe I have to modify the shape, which must be similar to the starting one for a correct perspective. The distortion at this point will remain the same, but what I'm going to change is the resize on the x-axis. And I also added some filters that modify the brightness of the wings, always in correspondence with the keyframes above. When the wings are closed, they will be darker than when they are opened. I adjust the position of the keyframes. OK, always try to be precise. At this point I'm going to resize the right wing like this. And I'm going to modify the HSB filter, giving more light. OK, now it's in right position. When changing direction, I will have to resize the wings in the opposite direction to have the right perspective. At this point, resize on the left and brightness. Same thing for the right wing. Let's also do the last keyframe so we complete the animation. Now I speed the video. And this is the result. It's just a small part of the animation I made for this project, but it basically just repeats itself throughout the scene. The ability to create groups and subgroups with different anchor points combined with distortion tools allow us to obtain smooth and realistic animations without having to draw frame by frame. Before moving on to the next animation that I want to show you today, I reactive the previous group. I added some filters to make ship's movement more dynamic. Zoom in on the timeline so you can see better. When the ship changes direction, the lens blur filter is activated. At the starting point, the filter is at 0%. It activates in the central part and then returns to 0. At the center point, the values for brightness and contrast are set to 100% and the radius 4%. For example, if I change the brightness, as you can see, the light points fade. But to make the filter stand out, the brightness must be at 100% because it's the value that is most noticeable compared to the contrast. Use filters dynamically, they can be very useful to give more dynamism and movement to your movies. In the last part of today's tutorial we see another animation of the TIE-Starfighter, in this case a rotation of revolution around itself. In this case I used the distortion tool and I will show you how I get the result. I'm going to remove all the outline first so we can focus on the ship. And speed the video. I also removed the movements that the ship makes so that we can focus on the animation that interests us, which is the rotation on itself. I'm joining the group. Let's start with the easy part, that is, the rotation of the central body. In this case I placed the rotation keyframes equidistant from each other. As I said before, the ship got its lose control and start to rotate. Now let's go and see the rotations in detail, and every keyframe the rotation increases by 90 degrees. Another important thing, to have a constant rotation, I set the trend curve to linear. But why did I put all these keyframes? I needed each rotation to match the movements of the wings, and to do this I placed each rotation keyframe at the same distance, so that the two animations matched. Because, as we'll see, the wings will not rotate, but will distort their shape to obtain this type of animation. I advise you now to pay close attention. The animation here is not very easy to understand, but I will try to make you discover all its secrets. Let's start from the starting shape of this wing here. The central body parallel to the bottom line of the screen. The first 90-degree rotation. As you can see, the wings practically disappear, but their animation is not rotation but distortion. That is, I took the vertices of the wings and moved them to that point. Now we will repeat the operation to make you understand better. I delete the distortion keyframes for a moment. I take the vertices and by rotating the central body with the distortion tool I move the shape of the wing above. trying to be precise and that the center matches, and also trying in this case to obtain a correct perspective. It will probably take a few tries to get the best result. I would say that as a first test, it sucks. I have to bring the vertices a little higher. Let's try again. When I press the shape, as you can see, at the slightest movement of the vertices, the center changes its position a lot. I have to try to keep that point in the center. This operation requires a lot of precision. Here it starts to go better. Now I try to tighten the vertices above towards the center, but I would say that it's not good. As I was saying before, I'm trying to bring this center right to the center. After numerous attempts, I would say we're there. Without doing rotations with the movement tool, but using the distortion, I got what I needed. The rotation continues. I will have to add another distortion keyframe to place the wing in the right spot on the right. And it will have to have this shape here, but at the same time it must go behind the central body of the spaceship. For this I cut the levels at the points where the wings are above and below, and brought the levels either above or below the central body. Let's remember that we are on Dreams, a 2D app, but with this trick I can still get what I need. The wing we disturbed before, so I cut it and copy it below, to bring it behind the central body and distort it into this shape. With a new rotation, the wing returns to being flattened as above. I scroll up on the timeline to return to the original shape of the wing. And then the distortion continues in a loop. Same method applied to both wings, obviously. As I was telling you before, not being in 3D software, I had to alternate the levels above and below, but I would say that the result is really interesting. The last thing I added is a brightness filter on the wings. At this point the brightness increases to give the movement greater depth and the correct exposure. Very good, dreamers! We have arrived at the end of the first part of this tutorial. I hope the animations you saw today will be useful to you in your future projects. Next week we will continue focusing on the animations behind the movement of the Jedi spaceship. A less important thing, I have to ask you, what do you think of the music I put in the background? And if you like it, very 80s today. If something was not clear to you, ask me in the comments. Thank you so much for watching, put like and